should be okay?
Yeah, so we can see you.
Yeah. So good morning, everyone. I am delighted to take part in this webinar organized by the Pegasus Students Forum of the renowned Madras School of Social Work. Without name each and everyone for want of time, and also the head of the department, Dr. Francis, for his kind words of introduction. Dr. Francis, thank you so much. And Dr. Francis mentioned one thing that I have done my postgraduate diploma in gerontology and geriatrics from the United Nations Institute on Aging, Malta. But I think as a kind of gesture of humility, he didn't want to reveal, or he didn't want to say. Actually, he was my batchmate. I'm so delighted to say that Dr. Francis with a fellowship from the United Nations International Institute on Aging. And more than that, Dr. Francis and I stayed in the same apartment complex together. We were, roommates also. And we enjoyed our time of learning and fellowship, and also, friendship during those days. I vividly recall the pleasant memories of those days with Dr. Francis in the, student apartment of the University of Malta. So that's a very pleasant, memory which comes back to my mind. Now, dear friends, those who are listening to me, and also those who are watching me through this online platform, some of you may be having a question in your mind, because you might have seen the e-flyer and you're seeing me now face to face, and you may be wondering whether there's a problem with the, whether the person is a different person. But I want to assure you, my friends, I am the same person, Dr. Ilango whose picture you see on the e-flyer. That was, I deliberately allowed them to put this picture because I want to just get one point across to you. That picture on the e-flyer is Ilango Kunnaswamy in 2013. And this is what you see now on the screen, my face. This is Ilango Kunnaswamy in 2020. This is what aging can do to a person. Not all of us go through this. Not all of us go through aging in the same manner. But different people age different patterns, and the experiences are different. The journey, the lifespan, and all the associated challenges are unique to every individual. So when you take my life, this is what aging has done to me. Of course, with all the other ailments and surgeries that I had gone through. So that's just at a personal level. I just want to bring forth that point just for you to understand me in my context. And as my friend Francis shared, we have done this long-term diploma in Malta way back in 1996-97, which was a launching pad for me into the field of aging. And from that time, I have been focusing all my research and all my academic, specialization area on gerontology and geriatrics. Just a moment. Now, I would like to just share the screen, the PowerPoint with you. Just give me a second to set up the PPT. I hope you all can hear me. I request the host to enable screen sharing. Actually, you have disabled my screen sharing. Dr. Rachel, could you please tell the person who's in charge to allow my video and sharing the screen? Yeah, thank you. I think now it's coming. Yeah.
So are you able to do it now, sir?
Yes, ma. Yes. Just
Okay,
hold
sir.
on for a second. Are you able to see the slide now?
Yes, sir, we are able to see the slides, sir.
Okay. Okay. Right. Are you able to see it full screen or is it one window? Okay. I think
Now,
now you will be able to see it full screen.
yes, sir.
Yes. So first of all, let me express my heartfelt thanks and appreciation to Madras School of Social Work team for concentrating on this special population during COVID-19. And my special thanks to all of you for considering the elderly as a special population. That itself goes a long way in really bringing this to the notice of the policymakers and to the society at large. Very often elderly are neglected. Elderly are not even considered as citizens of the country. I mean, I'm just saying in terms of service provision or policy making or in any aspect of planning. Elderly are given least preference. So in that context, I would like to congratulate Madras School of Social Work for taking up this particular theme of elderly and looking at the problems of elderly during this COVID-19 lockdown and also how they are affected. Just connectivity problem. Yeah. So as the concept of elderly itself is somewhat problematic. In fact, internationally accepted terminology is older persons. My friend Dr. Francis would agree with me, and all those who are in the field of aging would certainly agree with that. Uh, in fact, the usage of the term elderly is not really appropriate because it is rather stigmatizing and sort of discriminating. But I don't blame MSSW for having given this title because this is very much in common day-to-day parlance. We keep using this term rather indiscriminately, and all of us are. I mean, none of us are an exception to that. Even I myself sometimes refer to the older persons as elder. So that's not a major problem. But what I'm trying to get across to you is that the elderly as a segment of the population, they are very much varied in terms of characteristics. Their characteristics vary at regional and global level, and even though most of the many countries define elderly as persons aged 65 and above, in India and also the World Assembly on Aging 2012 and the UNDP and all the international bodies have defined old age as, have defined the aging or the age of 60 plus as the elderly or older persons. So conventionally, the elderly population have been defined as a chronological age of 65 years or older, except in India and some countries, while those from 65 to 74 years are referred to as early elderly, and those over 75 years old are late elderly, as per the Geriatrics and Gerontology International Journal 2016. But the UNDP and all the UN documents also use another way of classifying the older people, as young old, old, and oldest old. So young old may be 60 to 75, old may be 75 to 85, and then beyond 85 or 90, there's no hard and fast rule. These terms are used rather loosely by different, sections of the population. Now, the concept of aging is associated with changes in dynamic, biological, physiological, environmental, psychological, behavioral, and social processes. I may not overstate this, the importance of this. As you all know, aging is a multi-dimensional process during which structural and functional changes accumulate. I was, mentioning in a lighter vein about my appearance, in 2003 and now. So you see the structural change. I have lost weight. I have become thin, and a lot of changes in my, the body, and also the musculoskeletal system. And there are a lot of functional changes as one ages, as one advances in age. There are a lot of functional changes. There are a lot of impairments. There's a lot of decline for some people. Of course, I'm not saying all elderly have decline of various things, various functions, but there are elderly who have serious problems with their functioning, and there are elderly who keep functioning extraordinarily well, even into their 70s or 80s or 90s, and even we see some people who go beyond 100, and we know of people who live up to the age of 110 or 115 or 20 even. So the fact that we have to keep in mind is that the elderly population or older person's population is a very diverse population. It's a heterogeneous population in terms of education, occupation, income, standard of living, all kinds of parameters. Elderly are a very heterogeneous group. So we must remember that as one of the important characteristics. And another important thing is there is a feminization of aging, which means that women outlive men in old age. It's a known fact that the longevity of women is greater than, more than the longevity of men. I'll be sharing the exact, statistics with you later. But at this point, I would like to let you know that the women outlive men in old age, which is a known fact to most of us, and that is why we see elderly women, being more in number, and also they are affected by multiple jeopardizing conditions. They are not jeopardized by one or two conditions like aging alone or being a woman alone, but they are affected by multiple jeopardies like old age, being a widow, being without income support, being without support from family, or stigmatized by relatives or family members or community members. So that could be another aspect. So please remember the second characteristic of aging, feminization. That means there are more old women, there are more older persons who are women. That means there are more challenges for them. As you know, in all the in our society and also many societies across the world, we live in a patriarchal society where women still have a lot of challenges. So I don't want to go into those details. And remember that the third characteristic of aging is that elderly people have multiple pathology. What do I mean by multiple pathology? Pathology, as you know, is abnormality. It can be psychopathology or medical pathology. So what I'm trying to say here is that elderly people often suffer from more than one physical or psychological or mental ailments. So that we should keep in mind. So it is not like we are not dealing with young people who may be most of them may be normal, and some of them may have some health conditions, but they may suffer from one condition. But when it comes to elderly, you must remember that there is a combination of various illnesses. An elderly person can be diabetic, he can have heart-related problems, he can be depressed. So all these physical and psychological illnesses can coexist in an elderly person. And the other point, so I wish, I hope all of you will keep these points at the back of your mind as we go through this lecture on various aspects of how we have to address the needs of the elderly. So, and another fact which I would like to bring before your attention is populations around the world are rapidly aging. Friends, remember that India is one of the most rapidly aging societies in the world. There was a time when European and when Western countries were aging faster. They have gone through that phase much earlier than us. But now India and China are fast, rapidly aging societies. And now you may be surprised to know that India, of course, you may not be surprised. It's a known fact. Even in terms of aging or in terms of population of older persons, India is second only to China. India is next to China. So we are India is the country with the largest elderly population also. So it presents both challenges and opportunities. So it's not just that elderly are a burden. We must remember that elderly are our own, people. It's when we approach aging from a lifespan perspective, we must remember that all of us are aging. Aging is a process which doesn't spare anyone. Aging starts from womb to tomb, it goes on till tomb, or from conception to death. So all of us are going to face it one day or the other. So we must remember that we are not, we should never consider elderly as a burden. But there are associated challenges. There are challenges of dealing with long-term care, better trained manpower to work with elderly, and also to make the environment more age-friendly. These are all, some of the challenges before all the societies in the world. And at the same time, you should also remember, friends, as social workers and as people who are working in the field of aged care or geriatric care, this is an opportune moment for us to look for various avenues for innovations. This is an opportunity for us to innovate, create new, intervention strategies, have very creative solutions for problems which are faced by elderly. Now, I just go a little faster for want of time. Now, in terms of individual aging, there are many challenges, as you all know. There are challenges related to intelligence. There are challenges related to attention, language, memory. These are some. Of course, there are many other challenges like physical functioning, motor ability, motor skills, and physical stamina. How much we can work. So you all know that in some cases, elderly people may have decline of intelligence, in decline of attention span from mild to decline, mild level. At a mild level, you may also see elderly people losing their, linguistic capability in some specific areas as they, become more and more, as they become older and older. And we all know that memory is, an area. Memory is a problem. Memory problems are very common among the elderly. But for, I think, just leave the other things for you to just have a glance. But I'll go into more important aspects related to the topic that's assigned to me. Now, the emergence of concept of the older person, as I said earlier, the UN has, even though it has not adopted a standard criterion for the whole world, but according to the UN, which we also, India is also a signatory to this. So we follow the definition of elderly as 60 plus years. So those who are 60 plus in terms of age will be considered as older persons. And this is universally acceptable term. That's why in the beginning I said the concept of elderly is a little problematic. We should avoid using the term elderly. And I would urge our social work students and faculty members and all those who wish to work in the area of gerontology, please change the way you refer to older people. Please refer to them as older person. They are just older than us. It's not that they are elderly, which means, kind of a negative, it has a negative connotation, or, it makes them sort of, discriminated against. So I'll just quickly go through some of the major statistics. As you know, India had about, say, 70 million elderly people in 2001, and now in 2026 we are going to have about 173 million. It's a huge number, percent, the absolute elder. I hope I'm not going too fast, Dr. Rachel. Dr. Rachel, I hope I'm not too fast. Am I audible to all of you? Kindly give me a feedback, otherwise I will not know,
Yes, sir,
because
you're
I
audible,
can't see.
sir.
Yeah, because I can't see any one of you, because my screen, I'm just talking to the blank screen. So you have to give me some feedback, or at least in the chat box. If there is
Yes,
any
sir.
problem with the audio or video, please let me know.
Sure, sir.
Yeah, fine. Okay, so now so far good, isn't it? So far so good. So now we'll go into the next area. This just to show the population aging trends in India. Now, as you can very well see from this slide, it's very clear and evident that the elderly population is on the rise. It's increasing. And, you see in the year 2001, it was around 6.7 or so. And now it has gone up to 10 and even more than that. Now we have more than almost around 12% of our population. And, there are a lot of problems with the statistics, countrywide statistics. There are a lot of cases which are not, there are a lot of people who are not really covered with the census. And, there are a lot of mistakes in the census also. Of course, census gives us a fairly clear idea. So as you can see, there's an increasing trend in terms of the aging population. Now the next one, Dr. Richard, could you turn off your video, because that's blocking my slide. Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah. So proportion of elderly in India and in the various states. Now, friends, here I would like to just highlight two important things. The first thing is that Tamil Nadu ranks number 2 in terms of elderly population. As you can see in the slide, in 2000 census also we ranked the second, and 2011 census also we have the largest elderly population, second largest next to Kerala alone. And in 2026, again, the same trend we are going to see. As you can see, the green bar. So we are going to have a huge elderly population, just like Kerala, maybe little less than Kerala, but still our problems are going to be very similar. You may ask me why? Because of enormous migration, because of the large, magnitude of the migrant population. But of course, now with this COVID situation, now we are really at a, at the crossroads. We are now thinking whether there will be return migration, whether migrants will come back, or how long this migration can go on. Can people still go for jobs abroad? Can people who are working abroad after this COVID, what is their situation? Because many of them are rendered jobless, and we do not know what is going to happen, but we have to wait and see. But I'm sure this is going to create, the COVID-19 situation is going to create a huge impact on the constitution of elderly population in India, especially in our state. And it's very appropriate that you have thought of organizing this program. And this is an area where Madras School of Social Work and all our schools of social work have to concentrate very much. And I'm appealing to all of you to consider, doing something in the area of gerontology and social work in the area of gerontology, which is fairly developed in some of the advanced countries like Australia, Canada, US, Germany. But we are way behind. We are very much lagging behind in that area. Let's start doing something in this area. I was very happy to hear that the Madras School of Social Work has a Center for Gerontology. I wish to inform you that we also have in Bharathidasan University, in collaboration with one of your alumni, the great man, Dr. K.R. Gangadharan, Director of Heritage Foundation. With his support, we are having a Center for Gerontology at the Bharathidasan University as well. Now, here in this slide, you will also find another interesting aspect. UP, the largest state in India, has the least, elderly population. It's very interesting to note that. But, we cannot go into the reasons why. That's not the subject for today's discussion. But, and I'm not an expert in the area of demographics, but I was interested in this because UP seems to have the least population, and that's going to be the trend in 2026 also, projection also. Now, distribution of oldest to old. This is a very important thing we have to see. You see now the distribution of old people, as I told you earlier, young old, old, and oldest to old. Dealing with a population of 60 plus, that means 60 to 64, 65 to 69, it's very different from dealing with a population above 70 or 74, or maybe let's say 75 plus, because they are old, and oldest old. Now it's a fact which everybody knows that the older you are, the more likely you are susceptible to many health issues and various other problems. So just see here the percentage of the distribution of oldest among the old. That is also it's quite it's increasing among the oldest to old right from 2001, even before that. And we are going to have practically, it's that old people will be looked after by old people. That means people like me, or maybe those who are above 60 and up to 75. Now, we talk about multi-generational households, which is a very recent phenomenon. Now we are having families with 4 generations. We used to have only families with 3 generations those days when longevity was less. But now, with the lifespan extended, we have families with 4 generations. That means the people who are caregivers for the elderly are themselves in the old age category. That means above 60. Now that means they are also prone to have health problems. Just imagine a person like me having to look after my father. Unfortunately or unfortunately, I do not have, my parents are no more. But just imagine a person who is 60 plus having his own health problem, having to look after his elderly parents above 75, 80. So this is the point that we have to understand. Now, the other important aspect that I would like to highlight here is the dependency ratio, which is a very important demographic characteristic, which has to be considered by the planners and policymakers. What is this dependent population? It's just the proportion of working age group population. What is the working age group? It is 15 to 19. 15 to 59. 15 to 59 years of age. Young people and middle-aged people who are capable of working and earning, and those who can support elderly people. So that is calculated, and that dependency ratios are given in this table, in this chart. So as you can see, the old support ratio, dependency ratio. The dependency ratio, to what extent elderly people are dependent on the working age group. If you see that here, it is increasing as the red line shows. So the dependency level among elderly keeps increasing. what it shows is that in 2026, for every 100 working age group people, we are going to have around 20 people to look after. That means, that's the ratio. 100 people will have to look after 20 people. Now, currently in 2011, it is probably, I'm sorry, now 2011, it's already 10. Yeah, I'm right. In 2011, it is 10. And it's going to be 20 in 2026. That means double the dependency ratio. More elderly people, double the population of elderly people are going to be needing support. And what is happening on the other hand to the potential support that's available for the elderly? How do you consider this? This is a demographic characteristic which is measured as the available support base for older population. It is just the inverse of the old age dependency ratio, which we just saw in the previous slide. Now here, if you can see, the support ratio, potential support ratio means not the actual support available, but the potential support. That means how many working age group people are there to support elderly people. So here, if you see, there is a constant steady decline. So 2001, it was 8.4, and then 2011, it was 7.6, and in 2021, it has come down to 6, and now in 2026, it's projected to come down even further. That means for 5.2% for 100 people, So the support ratio is going to come down drastically. That means the elderly people are likely to look for formal caregiving. This is potential support ratio shows the informal support that's available from children, grandchildren, or family members. But when that declines, they have no other option except to go for formal caregiving professionals. Now, this I don't want to go into details, but just want to highlight which is a problem: individual aging or population aging. Both of them are not problems. Both of them are just processes with associated challenges, like any other stage of life. Like even childhood has its own challenges and problems. Children can have problems. Elderly people also can have problems. Middle-aged people can have problems. All of us can have problems. So it's not only elderly who have problems. So we must have that clear idea in our mind. So individual aging varies among people, highly heterogeneous kind of population aging. The entire population aging of a country also, depends on various factors. And we have chronological aging. This is just a matter of age, just a mere number. Is aging only number? Is old age only a number? Are we justified in calling a person old just because he has attained the age of 60, as we do it in India? And we have even some cultural sanction for that. We have, 60th birthday celebration as subsidy of the booty and all that. But that alone may not define a person as an aged person. People like Amitabh Bachchan and all those people, how they are doing, how they are able to function so well, even in their late 60s or 70s. And then functional aging. So the functional aspect of aging has to be considered. Then what does the society consider as aging? As I said earlier, society considers retired people as old people. Now, Kerala had retirement age of 56 sometime back, many years back. But now they have increased it. But when it was 56 in Kerala, do you mean to say at the age of 56 a person becomes old? So it's not correct. So but anyway, social stereotype images are there. And then there is psychological process. Young are trying to do many things. Even 10% who's just in his 20s or 30, but he may behave like an older person without interest in anything, without energy level, without stamina, having lot of maybe due to improper eating and sleeping habits. They may have all kinds of problems. And then there is the economic aspect of aging, which mainly focuses on pension, social security, and then lastly, the political aspects of aging. The voice of the elderly, I think that has to be given importance. The voice of the elderly voices of the elderly are not heard by the politicians and the policy makers. This is a very sad state of affairs in our country and many countries around the world, because there is a strong negative image of aging, which we call as negative, we talk about negative ageism, discriminating attitude towards elderly. After all, they have lived their life. What are they going to do? In what way they are going to, be useful to society, which is totally wrong. Elderly people can still be considered as a resource. They can still continue to contribute to the society. As we know, many of our leaders are elderly. Many of our top politicians are elderly. Many of our administrators of private organizations are elderly. People like Ratan Tata. You name anyone, you name many people, you can think of many people. So there's a lot of politics involved in defining aging, and because the moment elderly are defined by the government is worried about pension, social security benefits, the tax, the burden on the government exchequer, public exchequer in providing social security, and all those related aspects, which I'm sure all of you understand very well. Now, you must also understand that the gerontology consists of various dimensions like sociology of aging, demographic aspects of aging, psychological theories of aging are there. There are economic theories, economics related to aging. There's a huge, field of economics related to aging in terms of pensions and income security, poverty among elderly, food security, a lot of things. And then biological aging is a huge field in itself. In fact, the predominant field of aging is biological aging. You see all the activities of aging related institutes in America, Australia, Canada. They are focusing mainly on the biological aspects of aging. Looking at ways to reduce the pace with which a person, becomes old, or changing the aging trends, trying to what you call as anti-aging formulas, anti-aging medication, all kinds of things. There are a lot of research going on related to that. Then medical aspects of aging, which is called geriatrics. A lot of things related to elderly. We talk about geriatric giants. There are 5 I's. Immobility, instability, insecurity, and two more aspects which don't come to my mind, right now. But I'm sure if you look into the literature, you will be fascinated to go through that. So there are a lot of challenges, medical challenges, which are considered in terms of 5 major categories called geriatric giants. And 3 of them are insecurity, instability. People will lose their balance and fall. Falls are a common occurrence among elderly. And then lack of income security. Incontinence. Incontinence is another major problem. Many of you might have seen the famous film in which Amitabh Bachchan has done a wonderful job of enacting the role of an elderly person with a constipation problem. Now that is the main problem among elderly, incontinence and constipation. So they may have become incontinent, or they may have constipation. So I don't want to go into other details. As you know, there are many dimensions in the area of aging. So on the whole, it all depends on how we view it. Do we view it as a crisis, or we just view it as a change which requires our attention? Okay, so this again I'm not going to, I'm just going to skip, because just broader statistics. As you know, now we have probably around 100 million, because this 80 million, I think it's based on the 2011 census. Now we are almost a decade, almost 1 decade has gone. So I'm sure now we must be having more than this. So I'm not exactly sure about the number, but I think the number must be around 100 million. So you can imagine 100 million is, I think, population of 2-3 states put together, 2-3 smaller states put together. So the enormity of the problem, it's very huge. Now let me go to the next one. One recent write-up I came across, which I thought I should share with you, and it captures some important aspects. And this is done by one of our own, very senior administrators of an NGO called Mr. Shankar. He's popularly known as Empower Shankar. He has got a huge NGO and doing enormous work. He's also consultant and representative at the world forums. And now he has recently, I think just 2 days back, he's made a statement elderly, and he is focused on, I just want to the older population in the region. That means he's talking about Asia Pacific region. Asia Pacific region population is going to triple between 2010 and 2050. So that means by 2050, we are going to have almost the population of the current population of India as the population of older persons in the Asia Pacific region, the whole region together. But imagine the size of Indian population. That much is going to be the population of older people, just for matter of general interest. But then he goes on to make some very interesting, observations that elderly people are affected by poverty in old age, poor health and lack of access to healthcare. Even during COVID-19, you all know that we were deprived of opportunities to go for regular medical checkups. You know how it is important, for how much it is important for elderly to have regular medical checkups. Some of them are on life-saving treatment, life-saving procedures like chemotherapy and all that. Now that is a big problem, and lack of employment. I need not elaborate on that. Lack of decent and living pensions. You all know only about 20% of our workforce have pension facility. 80% of those elderly people who are in the unorganized sector, like agriculture and other fields, they don't have any kind of social security except the paltry sum of maybe 1,000 rupees or 1,500 rupees given as old age pension by the government. So I'm not blaming the government, but what I'm trying to say is that the people are living with such difficult conditions. Older people are not having decent and living pensions which are sufficient for decent living. And then there is a migration of traditional caregivers. Now this may change after COVID-19. I think, I'm not sure. Demographers may have a better idea what's going to happen to the migrant laborers. Are they going to come back? Are they going to? Are we still going to experience exodus of people from India or from one state to the other? All that remains as a big question. But that's a matter of concern. And older persons also become subject of abuse and violence, not only in old age homes, but also in families. I need not elaborate on this. You all know that there are cases of cases of elder abuse reported from different parts of the country, and even to the extreme extent of even murders. Elderly people who are living alone being murdered for for so many reasons. We have even seen a family member pushing his own mother or mother-in-law from the top of the apartment complex. So, a viral video that we all saw some time back shook all of us. So, such incidents are always happening. So, it's also going to, now coming to COVID-19, one of the main points that we have to consider here is that healthcare has been denied for conditions unrelated to COVID-19. The entire healthcare machinery is focused on COVID-19, and the regular healthcare needed for elderly people have been put aside. And now, hopefully, with the lockdown restrictions being relaxed, and probably lockdown when it is going to be lifted, we do not know, things may change. But still, during this 50 days or during the last 2 months of lockdown, imagine the number of elderly people who would have suffered. I know of people who are living alone, who don't have anybody because the spouses have died, and their spouses, the elderly person's spouses no more. If doesn't have, he's not mobile, he's bedridden. Who will cook food for him? Who will take care of his medication? It's all a big problem. And then I need not go talk about neglect and abuse in institutions and even in families. Elderly people are subjected to neglect and abuse, and increase in poverty and unemployment during this period. You all know this case of this Mahatma Gandhi rural employment scheme. Mahatma Gandhi rural employment guarantee scheme. What has happened now? The number of days of employment has come down. Lot of employees, lot of workers are elderly women. So now they are deprived of their even that small income, and dramatic impact on the well-being and health. COVID-19 has caused. I can tell you from my own experience. Last 2 months of lockdown, I remained at home. I could not go anywhere. Now with all my difficulties, now when I started going out yesterday, because our university started functioning with 50% of staff as per the government order, and when I started moving out, I realized how my muscles have become tightened because of loss of because of lack of activity. Now because I'm suffering from a neuromuscular condition, and without regular exercise, without regular activity, my functioning will deteriorate. Now, physiotherapist is unable to come to me. I'm not able to invite a physiotherapist to come and attend on me because of the fear, because he comes from a hospital. So you understand the impact on well-being and health of older people. Trauma of stigma and discrimination, this has always been there. And there is a lack of universal social protection policies and programs. I just want to go to the next one. And there is a failure to consider and address these issues will result in more serious problems like complete exclusion or exclusion to a maximum extent, and discrimination of the people without specific and inclusive measures for the person. For want of time, I'm just going to the last part of my presentation, and I will just be happy to take up any question for our discussion. Just quickly, some points I would like to just remember. The United Nations documents have given these important aspects. We have to recognize population. Second, statistical frame. In our census policies and census procedures, we don't have age-specific, description of many aspects. For example, I tell you, we do not have a database of elderly people who are living alone in a particular neighborhood or in a particular city, in a particular village. That's not part of the census. But I'm not saying census should take care of everything. I'm not saying the Ministry of, the national level, the central government should take care of all this. But I'm talking about even the responsibility of the local government to maintain a database. Local government has to maintain a database of elderly people who are living alone with the health problems and all that. And older persons must be included in the formal implementation process. Now, in COVID-19, elderly people were systematically excluded. Of course, you have a medical reason for that. You say they are vulnerable for infection, but tell me who is not vulnerable for infection? Everybody is susceptible to the infection. And if careful personal protection is taken care of, I think elderly can still function as caregivers, as doctors, as nurses, or as NGO functionaries, as social workers. Why should we put a restriction on age? One of my classmates who wanted to volunteer, he applied, and he was rejected because his age is 60. They said, you are old, so we are not allowing you to volunteer because you are likely to contract that virus. So I'm just leaving the other aspects for want of time. I'll just come to the last part. The United Nations Secretary General, in his recent report, he has talked about this upheaval because of COVID-19 and its impact on older people. And he has given a very positive note that most of the societies are age-friendly and having a lot of respect for elderly. But I would like to just show you one slide. I'll just go to the next one. Yeah, this is the last one which I wanted to share with you. So when it comes to addressing the needs for the elderly, needs of the elderly during COVID-19 and also post COVID-19, my dear social work fraternity, I appeal to you to keep this framework. This is a very nice framework given by the UN. Please focus on economic well-being. You know, as I said, um, more than 80% of older persons do not have any income security. So that is a matter of concern. Then life and death. Fatality rates are 5 times higher than global average, and that means among older people. An estimated 60%, 66% of people aged 70 and above have at least one underlying health condition. And another important aspect is geriatric mental health. The social distancing or physical distancing or whatever you may call it, it's taking a heavy toll on our mental health. Not only on us, especially on elderly, because already they have been excluded, now they are included even more. And then the vulnerability part of it, we often rely on elderly care. Elderly often rely on care. Almost half of COVID-19 deaths in Europe occurred in long-term care elderly homes. Older women often provide care for older relatives. That means they are also at the risk of infection. And then we also have to look at the responders. Older persons are not just the victims or at the receiving end. They are also responders. They can do good work. We have seen so much in the social media how elderly people in neighborhoods, how they are extending help to others. So many such videos are going viral these days. And then we also have to remember the aspect of abuse and neglect. We have to focus all our intervention strategy on all these major parameters, major aspects, and make our social work interventions very innovative and useful for the society. And finally, I would like to end with this. The UN document, says that this is a defining moment for informed, inclusive, and targeted response. So that is the message I would like to leave with you, my dear friends. As social workers, we have to have informed, inclusive, and targeted responses to elderly who are affected by COVID-19 or who have survived COVID-19 or who have come through this COVID lockdown and lived successfully or healthy lives and look forward to many more years of life. So with these things, I would like to conclude my speech, and I would like to thank the organizers once again for the opportunity, and I would be happy to take up any questions if there are. Thank you
So
so
much,
much.
sir. The first question for the day is: can you tell us what are the measures taken to meet the needs of elderly suffering from Alzheimer's during this lockdown?
Could you kindly repeat the question, ma'am?
Sir, what are the measures taken to meet the needs of elderly patients suffering from Alzheimer's during this lockdown?
As far as my knowledge goes, I may be wrong, but I have my own limitations. But because these days, because of all the negative news that always portrayed in the media, I'm not glued to the media or glued to the television and following everything happening around the country. So I can't answer that question in a straightforward manner because I do not know of any targeted response to people living in churches, treatment service for patients, persons with Alzheimer's, who are mostly elderly. Almost all of them are elderly. They are doing enormous work. I am not aware of any strategies or interventions targeted targeted on the Alzheimer's, people with Alzheimer's by the government, either state government or central.
Sir, can you please shed the light on how social worker can cater to the needs of the elderly and what is necessary to build capacity of the social worker working in the gerontology field?
Wonderful. That's a wonderful question. Whoever has asked the question, I'm not sure it's the student or faculty or administrator. But uh, at an individual level, because we can't wait for macro level changes to take place and then start doing things. Now, for example, I never got into this field, just, I mean, because of, I wouldn't tell a lie saying that, right from childhood I had a passion to serve the elderly, that's why I come. No, I just got an opportunity to learn about aging, and, it happened accidentally or by God's providence. So I got initiated in the field of aging in 1996 when I just attended a small workshop. That was again an international workshop conducted by UN International Institute of Aging in Malta. See, for example, now you are attending this webinar. You are listening to some of the thoughts, some of my reflections on aging. Now, if that motivates you, it is up to you to take up this more seriously. Do a lot of reading on gerontology. There are a lot of books on social gerontology and medical geriatrics and psychogeriatrics. I would strongly encourage a social worker to read up a lot about, because everyone cannot go for a higher level training in geriatrics or gerontology. Of course, some of us can do that, but all of us cannot do that. So, if you are interested in working with the elderly, equip yourself with the knowledge of aging. Read very important textbooks on aging. Go through. Nowadays, you have just enormous literature available through the websites, through the online. So there are a lot of things which are available. A lot of books are available even in PDF form. So read books on aging, gerontology, read journals related to elderly or aging. International Journal on Aging is there. Indian Journal of Gerontology is there. So you can go through that, familiarize yourself with all the finer aspects of aging, and look at various dimensions of aging. But I would appeal to you not to venture into everything. Don't try to do everything as a social worker. Try to take up one area. For example, if you want to work in the area of psychology of aging, take up counseling for elderly people. If you want to improve their mental health. Or if you want to work for the economic aspects of aging, start doing something for their income security. Maybe in your neighborhood, maybe in the organization where you're working, among your clientele. Try to do something for their income support. So that depends on your specific interests, and then you'll have to go on learning, go on refining your skills, and start doing something in the field. I would say, if you have a desire to serve the elderly, this is the moment for you. So this is the right opportune moment, as the UN document says. This is the defining moment for social work, I would say. And I would appeal to social work educators to consider increasing the zero content, not zero. I'm not saying zero, I'm talking about zero. GERO, zero content, gerontology content in social work education. Please increase the gerontology content in your social work curriculum and also in your field work, field practicum, social work practicum. Please ensure that not just ordinary work is done, but some good quality professional interventions are done. That would be my humble suggestion.
Sir, your voice is a little bit low. Can you be a bit more louder, sir?
Yeah, yes. I get my volume full, maybe due to some connectivity issues. But I hope you could hear what I.
I'm not able to, sir. Can you be a bit more louder, sir?
Volume is on.
Okay. So the next question is, the world data reveals that elderly are most affected in COVID. However, it is not the case in India. What do you think is the reason behind it, sir?
Yeah. That's again a very specific and pointed question. I appreciate the person who asked that question. My simple reason would be that I don't think the trend is different. That's what media reports may be saying. Or maybe you have gone through some popular magazines or dailies and you have come to that conclusion. From whatever little I have been exposed to, even in India, death rate seems to be, among the people who died due to COVID infection. I think there's a large proportion of elderly people, but I'm not very sure about that. I'm not a medical expert in that area. I'm not an expert in that area. But however, even if it's underrepresented, it is not because elderly people are not affected. It is because of our reporting system, because of our system of the head count or system of census, or I wouldn't say census. We don't have any database. It's a problem with our database. How many of our elderly people in rural areas who die every day due to various problems are accounted for in the government statistics? Let me know. So that is the problem.
Sir, how can the elderly people overcome this quarantine situation?
Right. Yeah. I think that way, elderly people are somewhat not affected in that aspect because especially the oldest old. I'm not talking about young old people who are in say 60 to 75 category who may be moving around into some extent. But the oldest old people have always been at home. Maybe many of them. I'm not generalizing. Please don't misunderstand me. I'm not generalizing that 100% of oldest old. But many of them are bound to be homeborn because of their underlying health condition. Now they may be happy to have their children and family members around because earlier, before COVID, nobody will be at home. Elderly people would have been alone. Now they are seeing their grandchildren playing. Of course, how much time their children and grandchildren and maybe even spouse devote for the elderly, that's a big question mark. I'm not saying in every family they are getting that kind of attention. But generally, elderly people like people having people around. So in the home, it's okay. But they are affected to a large extent because of non-availability of healthcare services, the routine checkups. See, many of us used to get our blood tests done at home. The lab person will come home and take blood samples and all that. And people used to go to hospital for regular some life-saving treatment methods. I'm not very sure about some of them, those things. But I have heard many other people saying I could not go for my chemotherapy, or radio therapy or whatever it is. So now I even heard one elderly person tell me I could not get my life-saving drug due to the lockdown and there was no courier facility. Even I myself suffered because I could not get one essential life-saving drug for myself because there was no courier service or postal service.
So the next question is,
Yes.
the government is reluctant towards the elderly. So how can we lobby for their rights?
Government is, I didn't get that word. Government is,
The government is reluctant towards the elderly. So
right.
how can we lobby for their rights and rehabilitation?
Yeah. It's $1 million question. But I know you are absolutely right. Now we can't go public with this statement, and no government will accept that. But policy makers are interested in revenue and numbers, and they will be convinced only by numbers. They will be convinced only by what they see in terms of statistics and hard data. Now the elderly people constitute a segment of the population which is rather unseen. They're invisible. Everybody knows what the elderly people go through because we all have elderly people at home or in our neighborhood, in our families. But still, when you see population aging, elderly as a whole, from a holistic perspective, not many people know the different dimensions of how elderly people are affected or how aging takes place. You can't expect everyone to be a gerontologist, and generally, uh, what happens is governments are. I wouldn't say our government is elected. Please don't, think that all over the world, governments are elected when it comes to elder care. You know why? Because most of the revenue does not come from elder. Revenue comes from the working age group, taxpayers. And elderly also pay taxes. I'm not saying elderly are not paying taxes. But they are not as productive as they were in terms of, say, contributing to the economy. And not only that, the other side of the coin is the government has to spend a lot on elderly. Geriatric care, very expensive. You need to have um, proper systems in place. And until very recently, we never had even specialized wards for elderly. Now we have, thanks to the efforts of Dr. Natarajan in our state, Professor Natarajan of Madras Medical College, very famous geriatrician, first person to initiate the geriatric ward in Madras Medical College Hospital, Madras GH, I think. He created the first geriatric ward. Now, of course, I think many places we have geriatric units. But we have a long way to go because it's a thing which drains the economy. But government should not look at it that way. Elderly people of today have contributed to the economy right from their young age. Whether they are farmers or teachers like me or whatever whatever may be their socioeconomic status or occupation, everyone, every citizen of the country, except maybe a few who are totally dependent and maybe addicts and all. That's only a small percentage, but majority of the people contribute to the economy in their own small ways. So it is the duty of the government. Elderly people also have rights to live, right to food, right to security, to have the UN Charter of Rights of the Elderly, just like rights of the children. So governments have to change their paradigm. They have to change their way of approach towards it.
So, with that, we come to the end of the question answer session. I now ask you to give your feedback and your remarks on this session, sir.
Sorry, Ma, I didn't hear what you said.
So, we come to the end of the question answer session. So, I request you to give your feedback and your remarks on this section.
Sure. Yeah. I'm very much delighted. It's been a wonderful experience for me to come on this virtual platform and interact with you all. And I think you've done a remarkable job of organizing this webinar. And I saw some of the earlier sessions when there were some technical glitches. But today, I think everything went on well. Thanks to the other faculty members, I think I see Dr. Jiswin and there's Francis and all of us. And of course, the entire team, the technical team also, for seeing to it that the session goes without any interruption. Because in many webinars, my experience has been negative because there were a lot of interruptions, failure of audio, failure of video, this and that, inability to share the screen, PowerPoint. But I think I have enjoyed this session, and I hope I would have shared some useful thoughts with all of you. And I hope many of our students and participants who are online will benefit out of this session and carry forward this message and start doing something in the region because it's very much the need of it. Thank you so much for the opportunity. Thanks, Rachel, and thanks, Dr. Rajesh and everyone. thanks to all the participants for the patient listening.
Thank you so much, sir. I now likewise rate